Indus Valley Civilization. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were excavated in 1921-22. They form part of the Indus Valley Civilization. This civilization first developed about 4,500 to 5,000 years ago and was considered to be a very highly complex civilization. The layout of the great cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro shows fairly extensive town planning. The buildings were constructed out of some kind of burnt bricks. A very significant regularity is shown by the weights and measures. The people of the Indus Valley Civilization tamed animals and harvested a variety of crops such as cotton, barley, peas and sesame. It is also believed that they might have been a seafaring people. Most interesting of all is the discovery of Indus Valley seals in places such as Sumer. In most respects, the Indus Valley Civilization appears to have been urban outwardly and a fundamentally agricultural civilization. Extensive trading was performed by the then class of merchants. It's believed that urban development occurred along a river that flowed through a virtual desert. The development of agriculture never occurred on any large scale, as, due to the absence of proper technology, they were unable to clear away a heavy forest growth. They used only bronze and stone tools. Channel irrigation was not in practice, and there was an absence of usage of heavy plows. It is believed that the outlying villages near Balochistan were attacked by the Aryans around 2000 BC. The Aryans quite likely overran the major cities, including Harappa. According to the Rig Veda, Indra, who was the Vedic war god, destroyed some forts and citadels that could have included Harappa and some other cities of the Indus Valley Civilization. The Indus Valley Civilization seems to have been struck a disastrous blow around 1600 BC, but this was not an explanation for why settlements at a distance of several hundred miles from each other were all eradicated. According to the most convincing historical narrative, the downfall and ultimate disappearance of the Indus Valley Civilization was facilitated by the arrival of the Aryans in India. Late Harappan culture, Paleolithic Age. The Paleolithic Age existed between 400,000 BC and 200,000 BC. The earliest imprints of human activities from that age have been found. For instance, in various parts of South Asia, stone tools and cave paintings from the period have been found. Evidence of domestic animals, agriculture, enduring village settlements, and wheel-turned pottery dating from the middle of the 6th millennium BC have been discovered in the foothills of Sindh and Balochistan. This civilization was the first to introduce a writing system. The appearance of urban centers and a diversified social and economical system took place around 3000 BC along the Indus River Valley situated in Punjab and Sindh. It stretched over an area of more than 800,000 square kilometers, extending from the border of Balochistan to the deserts of Rajasthan and from the Himalayan foothills to the southern tip of Gujarat. Consistent urban planning and carefully executed layouts, water supply and drainage have been discovered from the remnants of the two cities of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Excavations at these sites and later archaeological digs performed at about 70 other locations in India and Pakistan shows a complex picture of what is now commonly known as the Harappan culture. The main cities contained some large buildings including a citadel, a large bath for private and public ablution with differentiated living quarters, flat-roofed brick houses and equipped organizational or spiritual centers enclosing meeting halls and granaries. The culture that then existed was that of a city. Harappan life was supported by widespread agricultural production and by commerce that included trade with Sumer in southern Mesopotamia. Tools and weapons were made from copper and bronze. Iron was not used. Clothes were woven from cotton and dyed. Cultivation of rice and a variety of vegetables and fruits was in practice. Domestic animals such as the humped bull was also present. The Harappan culture was a conservative one. It didn't change for centuries, even when cities were rebuilt after periodic flooding. The previous pattern was followed closely by a new level of construction. It is clear that stability, regularity, and conservatism were the hallmark of these people. Even then, it is not clear who wielded power. Steatite seals found in plenty in Mohenjo-daro are the examples of Harappan artifacts. The most perfect picture of Harappan life is provided by these small, flat, and typically square objects with human or animal motifs. Inscriptions were also found that were generally thought to be in the Harappan script. Still in debate is whether the script represents numbers or alphabets. Further debate abounds as to whether these are alphabets and Proto-Dravidian or Proto-Sanskrit. According to some historians, the destroyers of the Harappan cities were the invaders from Central and Western Asia. Frequent floods caused by tectonic earth movement, soil salinity, and desertification are more probable explanations for Vedic period. Vedic India is known largely for its Vedic religious texts. The Vedas recorded the religion of the Vedic people as well as details of their lives and culture. The Vedas were written by the Aryan people between 1500 and 800 BC. These texts were composed and transmitted orally. They consisted of hymns, myths, spells, and rituals. A close connection existed between the priests and the chieftains. Ceremonies were performed by the priests to establish the rule of the Raja. The priests were supported by the Raja, who gave them wealth, influence, and strength to support the elaborate religious hierarchy. The four major castes present then were the Brahmins or priestly caste, the Kshatriyas or warrior caste, the Vaishyas or the farmer and tradesman caste, and the Shudras, the caste of servants and unskilled workers. The general belief was that the dismembered body of the god Purusha was from where these castes arose. Because of the importance of sacrifice, religion of Vedic India was sacrifice-based. Soma and Agni were two of the most important gods in the Vedic pantheon. The god of the sacrificial fire was Agni, and Soma was the god of the sacred drink and the moon. In time, change was bound to occur. The Upanishads were composed in the later part of the Vedic era. The Upanishads were considered to be the last of these works that were written by the rishis or seers. The Upanishads is based on the hypothesis of the existence of a universal consciousness, the fleetingness of this life. It was the first to describe the nature of the soul or the Atma. The Atma was part of Brahma, a part that could be rejoined with the overspirit when the individual possessing it attained enlightenment. The cycle of reincarnation is where it would be trapped otherwise. Among the concept of the Upanishads, the concept of the reincarnation cycle was one. The cyclic view of time was expanded in the Upanishads. The numbers of divisions of each cycle was 4. These were known as yugas or ages. Each of the yugas was of increasing length and decreasing virtue. Mahayana, or the entire cycle of yugas, was of 43,20,000 years in total. After each Mahayuga, another would begin until 1,000 had passed, a total that was equal to 1 day in the life of Brahma, the creator god. Kalpa was a name by which a day in the life of Brahma was known. A day in the life of Brahma was equal to the time a single bird would take to wear a great mountain to sand by rubbing its peak once per day. But Brahma is mortal like everything and dies after 100 years. At that time, the universe is completely dissolved. The universe and Brahma gets reformed after 100 Brahma years and everything starts once again. Further development of Indian civilization occurred against this backdrop. The root of the golden age of Ashoka's rule, Buddhism and modern Indian culture is the Vedic age. The Mauryas. The Nandas were overthrown by Chandragupta Maurya. Chandragupta Maurya and Kautilya joined together with the Pauravas. Kautilya disposed of the enemies of Chandragupta Maurya one by one. Very soon the Paurava prince was killed. After Alexander died in Babylon, it became practically impossible to hold India together. During the same time, Chandragupta composed a powerful army. Chandragupta played an important part in liberating India from Greek rule. Soon the Nandas were overthrown by him. He captured the capital city of Patliputra. Seleucus, ambitious in nature, crossed Indus on the other hand, with the ambition to recover the lost conquest of Alexander. Chandragupta mutilated his expedition and Seleucus entered into a treaty with Chandragupta. According to the treaty, Kabul, Kandahar and part of Herat and Baluchistan would be added to Mauryan territory. Chandragupta's territories extended as far as Saurashtra in the west and Deccan in the south. Jainism was adopted by him. He renounced worldly affairs and went to South India. Chandragiri was the place where he spent his last days. Here can be found the tallest statue of Gomateshvara. Chandragupta Maurya was succeeded by Bindusara. It is believed that Chanakya survived his master and kept on working as the minister of Bindusara. No evidence of conquests which Bindusara achieved can be found, but it is sure that the people of Taxila revolted twice. It's unknown why the second revolution took place, but Bindusara was unable to suppress it because of his untimely death. Bindusara's second son was Ashoka. He was the viceroy of Ujjain during the reign of Bindusara. He had to suppress the rebellion of Taxila due to the untimely death of his father. He ascended the throne, taking his ministers into confidence. Although there is no evidence, the fact that his formal coronation was delayed for some years was due to the dispute between his other brothers for the throne. Finally, he was crowned in 269 BC. He conquered Kalinga in the 13th year of his reign. According to records, 100,000 people were slain, 150,000 held captive, and many times that number died during the war of Kalinga. A new period in the history of Magadh as well as India opened due to the Kalinga War. Ashoka was unable to tolerate the suffering of the people who survived the war. He became a Buddhist. Propagation of his new religion was performed through engravings of his Dhamma, law of piety. The rock edicts were found all over his empire that extended till the Deccan in the south. The decline of the mighty empire of the Mauryas started soon after the death of Ashoka. After the death of Ashoka, many disintegrating forces seem to have been in action. Different parts of the empire became free, and the Mauryan Empire now gave birth to minor segments. Guptas. Soon after the assassination of the last Mauryan king in 184 BC, India became a collection of undefeated kingdoms once again. In the Deccan to the south, particularly in the west, were situated the most powerful kingdoms. The north, however, remained culturally alive. Buddhism was spreading there, and the Upanishadic movement was gradually remaking Hinduism. The empire was revived in the north under the reign of Chandragupta I. He conquered Magadh. He then set up his kingdom where stood the former Mauryan capital. From this base, he gradually consolidated his kingdom over the eastern portion of northern India. Many of Ashoka's principles of government were also revived by Chandragupta. Later, the kingdom was extended into an empire over the whole of the north and western Deccan by his son Samudragupta and by his grandson Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II was considered to be the greatest of the Gupta kings. He was also known as Vikramaditya. He was the one who presided over the greatest cultural age in India, the golden age of Indian culture. Wonderful and creative works of architecture, sculpture, and painting are the high points of this cultural creativity. Among all the works of Indian art, the wall paintings of Ajanta cave in the central Deccan are regarded as the best. The different lives of the Buddha are represented by the cave paintings. These works of art also act as the best source we have of daily life in India at the time. Ajanta is made up of 48 caves. The majority of these caves were carved out of rocks. Inside those caves can be found plenty of Buddhist sculptures. The great 18-foot statue of the three-headed Shiva, who is considered to be one of the principal Hindu gods, can be found in the rock temple at Elephanta near Bombay. Each head represents one of Shiva's roles. These roles were of creator, preserver, and destroyer. Dynamic buildings of Hindu temples were also found during this period. Each of these temples consists of a hall and a tower. Kalidasa was then the greatest writer. Poetry in the Gupta age tended towards few genres. These were religious and meditative poetry, lyric poetry, narrative histories, and dramas. Kalidasa excelled at lyric poetry, but dramas were what he is best known for. 3 of his plays were bathed with epic heroism, comedy, and erotica, misunderstandings, and conflicts. However, they all end with unity, order, and resolution. The Guptas tended to let kings remain as vassal kings. They did not consolidate every kingdom into a single administrative unit, as were done by the Mauryas. A wave of migration by the Huns, people who originally lived in the north of China, was the reason behind the decline of the Guptas. They conquered the Guptas in 480 and took over northern India. A strange thing happened to the Huns in both India and Europe. Over the decades, they were gradually assimilated into the local population, and as a result, the state became weak. One of the descendants of the Guptas, by the name of Harsha, swiftly moved to re-establish an Indian empire. A vast empire in northern India was ruled by him from 606 to 647. Harsha is considered to be one of the greatest conquerors in Indian history. He was also a brilliant administrator. Over an area of 4 or 5 miles along the Ganges River was situated his capital city of Kannauj, where can be found plenty of magnificent buildings. The amount that went towards administration of the government was only 1/4 of the total taxes he collected. The remaining 3/4 of the taxes were used for charity, rewards, and specially culture that involved art, music, literature, and religion. Because of extensive overseas trade, the cultures of Burma, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka were intensely influenced. In various ways, the period during the Gupta dynasty and also the following period was considered to be the period of Greater India. This was a period of cultural activities in India and surrounding countries that was responsible for the building of the base of Indian culture. Rashtrakutas. Danti Durga was the founder of the Rashtrakuta Empire. From South Gujarat, Malwa and Baghelkhand in the north to Tanjore in the south was situated his empire. Krishna I, who was his son, succeeded him. He was a warrior as well as a supporter of art and architecture. His patronage is clearly proved by the rock-cut temples of Ellora. Govinda II succeeded Krishna I. Govinda II was also called Prabhuta Varsa. Dhruva Nirupama, who was his younger brother, ultimately overthrew Govinda II. The prestige of the Rashtrakutas was immensely increased by Dhruva. The Vindhyas was crossed by him. He defeated the Pallava ruler Dhantivarman, and his overlordship was accepted by the Pallavas as well as the Gangas. It is also believed that the Patliputras and the Palas were also defeated by him. The last great ruler of the Rashtrakutas was Krishna III. He succumbed to the attacks by the Vijayanagar kingdom. During the time, Muhammad Tughlaq was losing his powers in Deccan. Two Hindu princes by the names of Harihara and Bukka founded an independent kingdom. This kingdom was situated in the region between the rivers Krishna and Tungabhadra, and this was in the year 1336, mainly in order to check the progress of Islam in the south. One of the chiefs at the court of the Hoysala ruler, by the name Sangama, was the father of Harihara and Bukka. The capital was founded by the two brothers at Vijayanagar on the south bank of the Tungabhadra. The first ruler of that kingdom was Harihara. His brother Bukka succeeded him after he died. Bukka was an efficient ruler and he brought nearly the whole Hoysala territory under his control. In the year 1379, he met his death. He was succeeded by his son Harihara II. The title of Maharaja Dhiraja was given to Harihara II. The entire territory of southern Deccan came under the authority of Vijayanagar during the time of his reign. In the year 1404, Harihara met his death. Sangama dynasty was the name by which the dynasty founded by the two brothers was known. The dynasty ruled for about 150 years. In the year 1486, one of their chiefs by the name Narsimha Saluva deposed the last ruler of Sangama dynasty and seized the throne. In the year 1505, during the reign of the second son, Immadi Narsimha, the Taluva chief by the name Veera Narsimha usurped the throne and thus became the one to lay the foundation of the Taluva dynasty. One of the greatest kings of all time was Krishna Deva Raya. He belonged to the Taluva dynasty. The golden period of Telugu history was ruled by him. He was the personification of patience, open-mindedness and nobility. His reign undoubtedly witnessed the ideal peace among diverse religions. Freedom was allowed to Muslims and Christians to worship, and they were given permission to build mosques and churches. This freedom was allowed in spite of the fact that the Vijayanagar kingdom was founded to meet the challenge to the might of the Tughlaq Sultanate of Delhi, and also to save the Hindu religion and culture from the violence of Muslim rulers. A separate hall by the name Bhuvana Vijayam was present in his palace. This hall was used for literary gatherings. There used to be present 8 poets who were known as Ashtdigajalu, that meant 8 pillars. In the year 1509, when Raya ascended the throne, the Vijayanagar Empire was in great disorder. There were uprisings in various parts of the empire. This automatically became a great challenge for the new ruler. The rebellious chiefs were restrained by him through a series of attacks on enemy territory during the first 4 years of his reign. the emperor showed great confidence in himself, his superior generalship, and in the intelligence of his prime minister, who was known as Timarusu. Raya was a pious Hindu. He often made visits to holy shrines. In spite of the fact that he was a staunch Vaishnavite, he used to respect all faiths and made visits to famous temples of Lord Vishnu as well as Lord Shiva. On 7 different occasions, he visited Tirumala. According to historical records, Vijayanagar was the most influential and flourishing kingdom in the south. Major industries in the kingdom included textiles, metallurgy and mining. Special attention was given towards trade. Central Asia, China and Sri Lanka were the countries involved in trade with Vijayanagar. This kingdom possessed very high standards of art and culture, refinement and luxury. With the death of Krishnadeva Raya in 1529, began the decline of the Vijayanagar kingdom. The year 1565 marked the end of the kingdom when Adil Shahi, Nizam Shahi, Qutub Shahi and Barid Shahi together defeated Ram Rai at Talikota. This led to the formation of small states. Invasion of Europeans in India. India has seen numerous invasions. The Aryans were the first among the invaders. They had formerly occupied the steppes of Central Asia, particularly in the region between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. The Aryans were tall, fair-haired and possessed clean-cut features. They used to speak a group of languages which have become known as Indo-European. They established themselves in the northern western region of India, now known as Punjab. New ideas, new technology and new gods were introduced by them. This is regarded as one of the most important epochs in Indian history. With time, the Aryans were busy in resisting the dark-skinned people, popularly known as the Dasyus. The Dravidians were the Dasyus. The Dravidians were forced to submit before the superiority of the Aryans. Around 500 BC took place the second great invasion of India. This occurred when the Persian kings Cyrus and Darius, while extending their empire eastward, conquered the Indus Valley. With the invasion of Alexander, the great king of Macedonia, in 327 BC, India came into the full light of recorded history after centuries of darkness, suspicion and conjecture. Muslim invasions. The founder of the Ghazni kingdom was Muhammad. He wanted to make Ghazni into a rich and powerful kingdom. For that reason, he decided to conquer Central Asia. A large, well-equipped army was required for him to do so. The army had to be paid a large sum of money. So he decided to invade India, as he had heard that India was very wealthy. About the year 1000 AD, Muhammad Ghazni invaded India. Thus began the Muslim invasions into the Indian subcontinent. In a period of 25 years, he invaded India 17 times. His main targets were big towns and temples. The main reason behind targeting the temples was the presence of large quantities of wealth in cash, gold, idols and jewelry. The temple towns of Mathura, Kannauj and Somnath were attacked by Muhammad. In the year 1030, Ghazni met his death. Muhammad Ghori conquered Lahore during the end of the 12th century in the year 1182 AD. He attacked the Rajput kingdoms soon after. At that time, the Rajput kingdoms controlled the Ganga plains. Prithviraj Chauhan, who was the then ruler of Delhi, led the Rajputs against Muhammad Ghori in the first battle of Tarain in 1191 AD. The Rajputs earned victory in the battle, but were defeated in the second battle of Tarain in 1192 AD. As a result, the kingdom of Delhi was conquered by the Muslims. Soon afterwards, the Turks conquered the Ganga, Yamuna, Doab. They also conquered its neighboring areas of Bihar and Bengal. Muhammad Ghori left India in 1206. He left the authority over his kingdom in the hands of his slave, Qutbuddin Aibak. After the death of his master, Qutbuddin became the independent ruler of the kingdom. He termed his kingdom as a slave dynasty. The first Muslim kingdom in India is none other than this one. The Marathas. The Maratha chieftains were initially in the service of Vijaypur Sultan of the Western Deccan, which was under siege by the Mughals. Shivaji Bhonsle was a determined and fierce fighter. He was known as the father of the Maratha nation. He was the one who took advantage of these conflicts and carved out his own principality near Pune. Pune later on became the capital of the Marathas. He adopted guerrilla tactics and waylaid caravans. This was done in order to maintain and enlarge his army, which soon had capital, arms and horses. A number of successful assaults were led by Shivaji in the 1660s against Mughal strongholds, including the most important part of Surat. He assumed the title of Lord of the Universe in the year 1674 at his detailed coronation, which signalled his determination to challenge the Mughal forces as well as to restore a Hindu kingdom in Maharashtra, the land where he originated. Shivaji's battle cries were Swaraj, freedom, self-rule, independence; Swadharma, religious freedom; and Gauraksha, cow protection. Aurangzeb insistently pursued the successors of Shivaji between 1681 and 1705. Nevertheless, he was ultimately forced to retreat to the north as his treasury became exhausted and as thousands of lives had been lost, either on the battlefield or due to natural calamities. In the year 1717, a Mughal emissary signed a treaty with the Marathas. This treaty confirmed their claims to rule in the Deccan as long as they acknowledged the imaginary Mughal sovereignty and reduction of annual taxes. Even then, the Marathas didn't stop. They soon captured Malwa from the control of the Mughals and afterwards moved east to Orissa and Bengal. Southern India also came under their province. Acknowledgement of their political authority ultimately came when the Mughal emperor invited them to take action as auxiliaries in the internal affairs of the empire and still afterwards to assist the emperor in driving the Afghans out of Punjab. The Marathas were not prepared to administer the state. Plunder and indiscriminate raids that they performed on the peasants characterized their policy. They became helpless before the invading Afghan forces headed by Ahmad Shah Afdali, who routed them in the Battle of Panipat in 1761. The shock of defeat hastened the crumble of their loosely knit confederacy into 5 independent states. Thus, hopes of Maratha dominance in India were shattered. Babur. Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur was the founder of the Mughal Empire in India. The empire was established after he defeated Ibrahim Lodi in the Battle of Panipat in the year 1526. When Babur ascended the throne of the Central Asian Kingdom of Fargana, he was only 14 years old. Ruling Samarkand was his greatest ambition. Numerous battles were fought by him in the pursuit of this goal, thus resulting in winning and losing of his kingdom several times in the process. He ventured into Afghanistan in the year 1504 and conquered Kabul. He invaded India for a total of 5 times in order to consolidate his rule. Every time he tried to do so by crossing the river Indus. His encounter with Ibrahim Lodi in the First Battle of Panipat, April 1526, was the 5th of his expeditions. Babur's army used guns to fight. Thus, his army was in advantage from that of Lodi's, who depended on the power of elephants only. The beginning of the Mughal rule was marked by Panipat. The Afghans and the Rajputs shared the political power in India at the time of the Battle of Panipat. After Panipat, the Hindu princes combined together under Rana Sanga, who was the then Raja of Mewar. This resulted in the formation of a sizable force. The size of the opposing army was so huge that the army of Babur started panicking. To stop his forces from retreating, Babur tried his best to instill confidence in his soldiers. He did so by breaking all his drinking cups and vessels and vowed never to drink again if he won the battle. When both the armies met in the Battle of Kanwaha near Agra on March 16, 1527, Babur decisively won the battle. Babur's victory at Panipat was confirmed and completed by Kanwaha. Thus, central India got its ruler, Babur. Unlike the gardens in Kabul, there were no gardens in India. This was a prime reason for Babur's unhappiness. After arriving in Agra, Babur chose a site across the river. There he had a well dug and a bathhouse was constructed there. Later he constructed a tank and a pavilion, and very soon a Persian garden was laid out. This garden brought back the memories of Babur's northern home into his mind. He was an intense admirer of any sort of natural beauty. Babur was also involved directly with literature and contributed as well in this field. He left to his successors a heritage of artistic compassion, a passion for attractive artistic objects, and eloquent patronage of Persian as well as native artifacts. The enjoyment of the fruits of his conquests was not in his destiny, as he died shortly afterwards in Agra on 26th December in the year 1530. As wished by Babur, his burial took place at Kabul. Akbar. Humayun died in an unfortunate accident in the palace at Delhi, when Akbar was only 13 years old. While rushing down from the stairs to answer the call for prayer, Humayun tripped and fell down and died. This unexpected turn of events left the newly reclaimed Mughal Empire in danger once more. Akbar was born during Humayun's flight from Delhi after he lost to Sher Shah. He was in Punjab at the time of his father's demise. Akbar was forced into the forefront of an empire in danger, as there was present no other claimant to the throne. Akbar's birth took place in October 1542. His mother was Hamida. At that time, Humayun was hiding in the Thar desert in a Rajput fort in Umarkot under the protection of Hindus. During his teenage years, Akbar was ably and efficiently supported by his regent named Bairam Khan. From the year 1556 to 1560, the empire remained protected because of the guidance of Bairam Khan. Akbar was still in Punjab even after the death of his father. Hemu, who was a miserably weak but crafty man, quickly attacked Delhi. The Mughal force was forced to take flight. An improbable challenger, Hemu, who was a chief minister of one of the Sur claimants, had to be driven from Delhi after his defeat. After this, Delhi was under the reign of the Mughals for another 3 centuries. The greatest among the Mughal rulers was none other than Akbar, and his achievements are remarkable and plenty in number. Among his achievements, the best one was possibly to bring Hindus and Muslims together. He entered into matrimonial alliances with renowned Rajput clans. He allowed his wives to follow their own customs and religion. Other aristocrats were motivated and encouraged by him to be liberal, and the accidental death of Humayun was the reason behind the disruption of Akbar's education. In spite of the difficulties that plagued him, he took keen interest in literary and intellectual discourses. He was kind enough in patronizing men of ability, ranging from music to metaphysics. Most famous among them were referred to as the Navratna, or the 9 gems. Tansen, who was a legendary musician, and the poet Rahim were among the 9 gems. A pious Muslim, he tried to promote mutual harmony by propagating Deen-e-Ilahi, that is an organization of goodwill and tolerance, which proclaimed respect for all religions. Among his administrative innovations, the most significant was that of the Mansabdari system. According to this system, every official of the state was put on the army rolls, irrespective of his duties, and the Royal Department of the Army paid every official from the lowest to the highest. The central control over the government and the army was greatly tightened as a result of this. The transfer system of officials was strictly implemented. The city of Fatehpur Sikri near Agra was built by Akbar. Although it was unable to replace the grand capital, the buildings there reflected his majority. Jahangir. Salim succeeded Akbar in the year 1605 with the name Jahangir. He was not a conqueror as his predecessors were. He just inherited the quite stable empire of his father. Jahangir was alcoholic and depended solely on his wife's decisions. Steering the politics was done by his wife. Jahangir was considered to be the most sympathetic of the great Mughals. His memoirs were no lesser to that of Babur's. It was under his guidance that the court painters reached great heights. The first 17 years of his reign were rather quiet and non-violent. The only exception was the rebellion of his son named Khusrau. At the time when Khusrau revolted at Lahore, Jahangir marched towards the provinces in the north. There he captured and imprisoned Khusrau. Sikh Guru Arjun was executed for the same reason. This angered the Sikhs. Khusrau was released from his chains a year later. Soon after, he plotted an attempt to assassinate Jahangir, which further led him to everlasting blindness. Repetitive reconciliation efforts resulted in failure for Khusrau. He led the rest of his life in prison. Jahangir fell intensely in love with a Persian woman named Mihir-un-Nisa. Jahangir married her in the year 1611. From then on, she was called Noor Mahal, or Light of the Palace, before becoming Noor Jahan. Her father and brother were given leading positions in the court along with Noor Jahan. They together started intensifying the prevailing Muslim attitude. However, Jahangir avoided all religious conflicts. The majority of his advisors belonged to the family of Noor Jahans. Khurram was one of them, and together their voices were enough to influence Jahangir. Great interest was shown by Khurram, and very soon he played a main role in the defense forces. The Rana of Mewar was suppressed by Khurram. As a result, he was given command of the force in Deccan, replacing his brother Parviz. Great interest was shown by Jahangir in art and in the minting of high-quality coins. Excessive consumption of alcohol, as well as asthma, proved to be the reason for his downfall. In the year 1620, he was unable to dominate the affairs of court. Noor Jahan supported her son-in-law Shahriyar rather than supporting Khurram. Khurram drifted into rebellion, mostly due to this. Nizam Shah kings of Ahmednagar were having difficulty in the Deccan. Khurram was put in charge to subdue Deccan. He restrained the south and built a powerful army. In the year 1616 AD, Khurram captured Ahmednagar and some other strongholds. It was only then that his father Jahangir rewarded Khurram with the title Shah Jahan, that means King of the World. To safeguard her interest of getting the future throne for her son-in-law Shahriyar, Noor Jahan was busy transferring Shah Jahan's Jagirs to Shahriyar. Shah Jahan. The fifth of the Mughal rulers was Shah Jahan. He was the most creative builder in the history of India. When Shah Jahan became the king, the Mughal Empire had reached its peak. He was the son of Jahangir and the grandson of Akbar. He is considered to be the greatest Mughal emperor. He ascended the throne in the year 1627. He was then 35 years old. The first step taken by him after he became the ruler was to extend the empire to the south. The Nizam Shahi's kingdom was conquered by him after an agreement with the Adil Shahi dynasty. He also annexed a huge part of the former kingdom. He made an attempt to repeat his success in northwest frontier region, including Kandahar, Balkh and Badakhshan. But he was not successful. Shah Jahan is best known for the creation of magnificent architectural structures. Taj Mahal is still regarded as the eternal beauty of love. His other creations were not less in number. They included a number of great buildings in Delhi and Agra. He also built the Jama Masjid in Delhi, which is the largest mosque in India. The Red Fort of Delhi was rebuilt by him. He added several styles of his own, such as the use of valuable stones and marble. Until the year 1657, he remained as the ruler. Afterwards, he became ill. A civil war for succession soon got going between his sons. Among his sons, Aurangzeb emerged triumphant. Shah Jahan was imprisoned by Aurangzeb and was put in the fort of Agra. From Agra fort, he was allowed to see the Taj Mahal that was situated across the Yamuna. This was the resting place of his beloved wife Mumtaz. His death took place in captivity in the year 1666. Beginning of British India. The establishment of the European epoch in Indian history was marked by the landing of Vasco da Gama at Calicut. He sailed to India via the Cape of Good Hope in the year 1498. Meanwhile, the Portuguese already established their colony in Goa by the 16th century. In the 17th century, a large number of European travelers, including Italians, Frenchmen, Englishmen, and Dutchmen, came to India. Some were traders, while others were adventurers. There were also relatively a small number who were fired by missionary enthusiasm to find converts to Christianity. Ultimately, France, England, the Netherlands, and Denmark floated the East India Company. These companies competed with each other severely during the late 16th and the 17th centuries. The English defeated all others by the last quarter of the 18th century, thus establishing themselves as the leading authority in India. For a period of about 2 centuries, the British administered India. They were responsible for bringing about radical changes in the social, political and economic life of the country. The British started commercially exploiting the natural resources and native labor ruthlessly after consolidating their power. By the middle of the 19th century, exploitation of the people became so rampant that it became intolerable for the Indians. British administration. The British territories were under the company's rule after the acquisition of India, but eventually the British government gained effective control. In the year 1733 AD, the British Parliament passed a regulating act because of the greediness of the company officers regarding money. The removal of political power from the hands of the company now took place. Precise measures to set up the administrative framework and judicial courts in different cities of India were also provided by the Act. Pitt's India Act was passed in the year 1774 AD. The base of the British administration in India was eventually formed by this. The governor, according to this act, is the royal authority over the land. It also stated that the Governor-General is responsible through army, police, civil services and the judiciary. Army. The Indian sepoys acquired a place in the British Army. The size of the army was huge and it was very disciplined and loyal. Payments were made on a regular basis. The officers of the army were all Europeans. Police. Law and order was maintained in the conquered territory to serve the economic interest. This led to the formation of a regular police force. The kotwals were given the charges of the cities. The districts were divided into thanas. A daroga was given charge of each of the thanas. The Indians formed the lower ranks. They were meagerly paid, and the Europeans decorated the higher ranks. Judicial system. The existing law in India was what the British continued with. The Bengal Resolution Act was passed in the year 1783. It accommodated the personal law of the Hindus and Muslims and stated them in clear terms. A rule of law was thus established by framing laws and setting up courts. This experience was new for the people of India. There used to be separate courts for Indians and the British. The rules of the two courts were different from each other. Civil services. The civil services were introduced by the British government mainly due to the fact that the company officers in the commercial offices were not successful at administration. The founder of the British administration was Cornwallis. He was the one who banned acceptance of presents by the administration staff. He was also responsible for paying handsome salaries to them. One of the best paying services in the world was the civil service started by him. This was meant for British citizens. There were no vacancies for Indians in the civil services.